What is going on? It's 12 noon on Friday, which means it's time for this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Charisma. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every single Friday, 12 noon Eastern time, to help you understand how to grow your real estate business. And today, there's a little story behind this, but we basically picked a number out of the air of $187,000. We really didn't pick it out of the air. I'm going to give you the story behind this here. And what we're going to be doing today is how, if that's your goal, how you're going to be able to hit $187,000 in gross commission income in just 1 year. Now, it's going to be up to you to actually do this and execute this and take the necessary levels of action. But first, you've got to figure out what are those necessary levels of action. Is it even possible in my current situation to be able to get to $187,000 in just 1 year's time? So I want to show you guys the story where I got this exact specific question earlier this week, and also breaking down how that's actually possible, how a real estate agent can make $187,000 in 1 year. It's actually 11 months was the time frame that I was asked about with that. So how to make $187,000 in 11 months, that's what we're going to be covering today, breaking that down, making it seem a lot easier than what it sounds. If you just say $187,000 and that's it, yeah, it's going to seem like that's unattainable and unreachable unless you've maybe done that before. But if you've never done that before, whatever that new stretch goal is that you're trying to achieve, we're going to walk through breaking that down today of how it actually is possible to have 187, 257, or whatever the dollar amount may be that you're trying to achieve. So stick with us. Got a great show for today. I'm John Charisma. You're watching State of Real Estate.
You are watching
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate. Hey, welcome back to this week's episode of State of Real Estate. My name is John Charisma. The show is brought to you by the Tampa School of Real Estate. We're here every Friday, 12 noon Eastern time, to help you grow your real estate business. And so today's topic, how to make $187,000 in a year, comes from a very real question I got asked earlier this week. And I got this question from one of my students that really was more of a story. And the question came from another student that, hey, look, I'm here in this class because my friend who's in real estate showed me these spreadsheets of how many deals he's been closing and how many properties he's sold. And she's like, oh, this year he made this much money. His second year he made this much money. And then this last year, 2019, was his third year. And up through the beginning of December, 11 months of the year, he made $187,000. And so the other student that was sitting there as part of this conversation is just awestruck and just saying, how? How did they make that much money? And so, being the real estate instructor, I quickly turned around to the whiteboard I was in front of and I said, well, $187,000? How did they make $187,000 in a year? That's the question you should be answering. And you learn how to do this math in your pre-licensing course for calculating commission and whatnot. This is more of a post-licensing thing for figuring out the business planning and whatnot. In pre-licensing, you would find out how much home at 3% would get you $187,000 commission. So you'd give that value of the home times 3% to get $187,000. But when you're planning your business, you're trying to find out how much value I need to sell, how much real estate I need to sell to hit $187,000. If your typical commission you charge is 3%, then just divide it by 3%. If your typical commission is less than that, divide it by whatever it is that your typical commission normally is. And if you don't know what that is, look at your most recent transactions. If you haven't done any transactions yet, stick with 3%. It might not be 100% accurate depending on what commission rates you end up charging and getting paid once you're actually practicing real estate, but this is a good starting number if you don't have that data already of how much you typically make in each sale. And it's going to have to be an average because the commission, of course, is always a negotiable amount and all that antitrust law stuff. But look, let's assume that it's a 3% commission. So on $187,000 in gross commission income. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you're walking home, that you're taking to the bank every year $187,000. This is gross commission income, or what's known as GCI, gross commission income. And this word gross means before expenses. So yeah, there might be some advertising expense in here. There could be, expenses for like the Association of Realtors, renewing your license and things like that. But when you got $187,000 in gross commission income, you can afford some expenses. But we're not even to figuring out the expenses yet. We're just trying to figure out how do we get that high for our top line revenue. And so in business accounting, there's this phrase of top line revenue. And top line revenue, they call it top line because it's at the top. Because that's what's the biggest number, is how much money you have coming in. And if that number is a zero, well, it doesn't matter how many expenses you have, you're losing money regardless. And the more you grow that top line revenue, your gross commission income, the more expenses that you can afford. So yeah, maybe your expenses are $100,000 to hit that $187,000, but you still walk away with $87,000, which would be a pretty good return on investment, especially if you're still within your first couple of years of getting your real estate license. So how much real estate do you need to sell? Going back to that question from that student that she was just awestruck, $187,000. How did they do that? Well, great question. Let's answer it. All we've got to do is divide that by 3%, and that ends up giving us $6,233,333, which $6 million? Wow, $6 million? That's a lot of money. If you think $187,000 is a lot of money, then $6 million is definitely a lot more money. But now, how do we make this more real? How do we make this more tangible? How do we wrap our brain around this more? Because you might not be able to wrap your brain around $187,000. You might not be able to wrap your brain around $6 million. How am I going to sell $6 million? Well, again, that is the question that we want to answer. How do you make $187,000? Well, that's you sell $6.2 million at a 3% commission. But now the next question is, how do I sell $6.2 million? It's not, can I sell $6.2 million? Because that answer is always going to be yes. If the answer is, can you do it? Okay, is it legal? Is it possible? Those are really the only two questions. And possible is pretty much always yes, as long as it's legal. And yeah, it's absolutely possible to sell $6.2 million in real estate in 1 year, or even maybe in 6 months. You could potentially do this in a month. You're probably needing to have a whole real estate team. But you look at these people in these big luxury markets where $6 million might be a cheap sale price, a cheap listing price, especially you get into more expensive areas like South Florida, New York City, San Francisco, other parts of the country where the cost of living is so much higher. This might just be one property that gets that $187,000. Now, to really understand the effort it is that you've got to put forward, because again, the goal here is to be able to wrap your brain around this so it makes sense. So when you get asked that question, how do you make $187,000? Oh, I just need to sell $6.2 million in real estate. But again, what does that actually mean? How much real estate? Do you just find one home that's $6.2 million? Probably not. There might not even be a $6.2 million home in your market, and you're trying to make it too easy. Don't take offense to this, but if you're trying to do this in one go, and you don't really have any homes in your market that are $6.2 million, that's a lazier route to take. And why you don't want to do that, because as you get into these $1 million price points, this will depend on your market, but the higher you go in price, the less people that can afford that real estate. So the goal here isn't to try to go get that one big listing that's just going to make you $187,000 in one shot. That's great if you do get that, but let's be realistic in what we're seeking out here. So what we're going to do next is figure out how many homes we need to sell. Now, in order to calculate how many homes you need to sell to get $6.2 million basically of volume, that would usually be the term people would refer to of how much value of homes they've sold. That's your volume. Well, we just divide it by what the average price is of a home. And so we'll say in Hillsborough County, it's about $300,000, give or take, also depending on the particular neighborhood. But let's just say it's $300,000. This is going to tell us, this calculation here, how many average price homes at our average commission that we earn, whatever that commission might be for you. This will give you an exact number of homes to hit that $187,000. Folks, this isn't that hard to figure out what needs to be done. Now, the execution of selling, however many homes we come up with here, yeah, that's going to take work. We could call it hard, but that's not even that's not a specifically defined word. Everything's going to be hard at first. Everything is difficult the first time you do it, and it only gets easier the more times you do it. That's true for pretty much everything, real estate included. But look, right now we're just trying to figure out, okay, is this even possible? Can we get this many homes in a year? Well, let's figure it out. So $6,233,333 divided by 300,000. We'll round up. It's 20.77, so we'll round up to 21 sales. Now, 21 sales, I would call you a top producing agent if you got $187,000 in gross commission income. If you look at the statistics for like average real estate agents, an average real estate agent, this doesn't take into account typically whether they're full-time or part-time, and this is a nationwide statistic, but an average agent, I think it's like $40,000 or $50,000. I think $40,000 nationwide, and I think Florida is like $50,000 for an average agent. So you might see that and see these average numbers, and that's discouraging if you see, oh, well, $50,000. I wanted to make $187,000. Is that even possible? It absolutely is. And the reason why these statistics are lower is there's a lot of agents who are just part-time, who do just real estate on the side, who get their license maybe to only do referral business, and they're not actively full-time practicing real estate. If you're actively full-time producing real estate, selling real estate, you could absolutely sell 21 homes in a year. Now, is that going to happen in your first year? Probably not. In your second year, maybe. For this particular example, this real-world example of a particular agent, according to that agent, this is all secondhand information I'm giving you, of course, here, but he actually had higher because his, I think it was like 30 homes for him breaking that down and showing how he got $187,000, which just means if there's more home sales, that's just a lower average price point. And especially as you get into lower price points, now, you might cut this in half. We cut this in half to a $150,000 average price point instead of $300,000, and that's going to depend on your market. And this is why it's so important that you do this math. You can't just take these numbers that I'm giving you and expect them to be accurate for your market, because every market is different. That's why real estate needs real estate agents, because the market is so local and they need local experts. So you've got to know your market of what that typical commission is that you would earn, how much the average sale price of a home in the area is, because if the average price in your market is $150,000, and that's why it's so important you do this for your market, you're going to need to do twice the amount of sales if you have half the average sale price. So if you take 6.2 million and divide it by 150,000, half of the average sale price, you're going to end up with about 42 homes that you need to sell. Now, you might see that higher number of, oh wow, 42 homes, how am I going to be able to sell 42 homes? Or maybe that's 21 homes, or again, whatever that number comes out to you based on what volume it is that you're desiring and that average price point in the area. But how do we break this down even further? Well, we could break this down even further, because if you wait to the end of the year to see if you hit your goal, you don't really have any time to catch up if you fell behind. So you want to establish almost like checkpoints or landmarks of, I've got to do this at this point, to do this at this point, to do this at this point, and if I hit these checkpoints, I should be able to get the finish line at that estimated time. Maybe that's 1 year here. So what do you got to do on a monthly basis? Well, on a monthly basis, that'd be 2 closings. 2 closings a month. 2 closings a month, you'll actually end up with 24 sales as opposed to 21. But it's always good to budget for that little bit extra, just in case you have 3 deals that you didn't think were going to fall through that fell through. If you're closing 2 a month, then you could have 3 deals fall through and you're still going to hit your 21. And that's a practice that you want to implement whenever you're doing business planning, is to always be conservative. And when I mean conservative, when I'm saying conservative, it's that you're overestimating what it's going to take to hit that goal. So whenever there's an opportunity to round up. Like we rounded from 20.7 to 21. We rounded from whatever that would have been, like 1.7 homes a month to 2 homes a month. Because you want to have these roundups, because the roundups are going to give you that buffer. So if you do fall short, if you do miss your goals to a little bit, you'll still come close to that overall GCI goal because you overestimated the amount of action it takes. Now you might look at that and say, okay, 2 closings, how do I get 2 closings a month? Well, that's 1 closing every 2 weeks. But now what do we need to have to get a closing? Well, in order to get a closing, we need to have an appointment. And now this is where this starts to branch out further. And like I was saying with the post-licensing, business planning is something, whether you're doing our online or classroom post-licensing course, that is a big part of it. There's a whole 15-hour segment in our post-licensing online course that's dedicated to business planning, and it's a big chunk of what you do in your actual classroom post-licensing courses as well. So if you haven't taken post-licensing yet, this is going through this math, but in a more in-depth scale and going through it in a guided fashion where you're breaking down, okay, I need to work with this many buyers, this many sellers, and I do that, and I get this many appointments a month and this many leads a week. So you're able to break this down to daily tasks, to these, again, checkpoints, these landmarks, these milestones that you're able to hit, the little daily executions and targets that you're hitting on a daily basis that add up to that overall larger goal. That's what's really important about planning and goal setting, is once you establish that, whatever that larger number is, and you don't want to get too hung up on picking this number, because if you're setting your goal right, you're probably, for your larger stretch goal, they call these stretch goals because it's really stretching yourself, and you might not hit it. You might fall a little bit short. Now, I like to set my goals big because I know a lot of times there will be unexpected circumstances that cause you to fall short. And so when you set your goals bigger, you have some room to fall a little short and still do pretty well. But you got to set up yourself to have some wins, because if it feels like you're not making progress and you're not moving forward and you're not accomplishing whatever objectives it is that you have, then you're going to get discouraged and just throw this all out the window. And when you're not working your plan, you end up being a part of somebody else's plan. So all you guys out there that already have a real estate license, maybe active with a broker, you've all gotten those calls before from Zillow, from Realtor.com, from whatever search engine optimization reseller of AdWords is out there calling you, trying to sell you advertising. And the reason why they're trying to sell you advertising is to make you part of their plan. Yes, they're providing you value by providing you leads and or whatever it is, but what happens a lot of times is if you wanted Zillow leads, you'd go call up Zillow. You're not sitting there waiting for, hoping that Zillow calls you. If you want to go buy Zillow leads, you just fill out a form on their website and they will call you. You go request that information and they will give you. They will sell you that information. Which, if that's what you're doing, that's fine. But where a lot of agents get derailed from their plans is when these telemarketers cold call them, and if you're hurting for business because you don't have a plan, you're not working your plan. There's somebody that said before that failing to plan is planning to fail. And look, I'm not a huge planner myself, but I still do plan. I still do like to run numbers. I still like to understand where it's like you're running a race. If you're signing up for some marathon, a 5K, whatever the case may be, before you go run that race, you're probably going to look at, okay, where's the map? Where do we go? How far is it that we're going? You're looking at these details to understand what you're getting yourself into. It's almost like, you get in your car and you got a long drive ahead of you. Have you seen those signs before you get on the bridges? I know we've got all these bridges here, these long bridges in Tampa, where you have the signs that say check gas. Long bridge ahead, check gas. Why are you checking your gas? So you don't get in the middle of a bridge and run out of gas and you're stranding out there in the middle of the bay, in the middle of this bridge where you're miles from land. That's why you check your gas. But what if your gas gauge doesn't work? What if you don't know how much gas that you have? You're just rolling the dice and hoping you're going to make it across that bridge. When you don't plan your business, when you don't lay out the steps for success, when you don't have daily tasks that you're going to execute, you're really just taking a chance. You're not being intentional about making your business work. You're hoping your business works. And I'll take being intentional about your business any day over just hoping your business works. Because hope, you don't have control over that. Whereas consciously making an effort to understand what needs to be done to hit whatever goal it is that you've laid out for yourself, and not just laying out this, but reverse engineering every single one of these steps so that you could take the temperature. Now, it's flu season. A lot of people are getting sick right now. You maybe have gone to the doctor before because you don't feel well. And what is the doctor doing when you don't feel well? They're collecting data on you. They're gonna get metrics on you. They're gonna look at your blood pressure. They're gonna check your pulse. They're gonna look at your eyes. They're gonna look in your nose and your ears and take all this data. They weigh you. They get your height. And they want all of these numbers so that way they could track and they could understand what's really going on. They can't see the little bacteria and viruses swimming around in you, but when they see that your temperature is too high, they're like, okay, something's going on here. When they hear your cough, they might not see what's going on inside of you, but they could pick up on this from this data that they're collecting. And when you have that data laid out, this is really what you're doing. You're understanding what you need to do to hit that goal. And it's not just, if as deep as you think about this is just, okay, I want $187,000 in commission income, and that means I need to sell $6.2 million in real estate, you're far less likely to sell that $6.2 million when you don't know exactly how many homes it is that need to sell. When this average price point, that's going to be important as well. So this $300,000 number, that's about what an average price home is in the Tampa Bay, Hillsborough County area. But if you're looking at a more specific neighborhood, because there's millions of people in the Tampa Bay area, so if you look at a more specific farm area, more specific neighborhood, you might find this number to be different. So if part of your strategy, part of your daily executions is maybe holding open houses or door knocking or sending mailers out or advertising online, you better make sure the area it is that you're advertising to does have an average price point of $300,000. Because if you're counting on an average price point of $300,000, and it turns out it only ends up being $250,000, are you going to hit your goal? No, you won't. But if you're keeping track of this, if you're measuring what it is that you're doing, and you're laying out this plan to where you can measure it, to where, and again, we could break this down to this monthly basis to figure out all the numbers we need for a month of, okay, we need 2 closings, or really we need, let's get the exact number here. So if it was $6,233,333. We're going to take this volume and we're just going to divide that out by 12 months. So about $519,000 a month. And you can see how that overestimation is there. If we just did $300,000, that's $600,000. And that's part of working the actual math, getting the actual numbers, because when you get a number like $519,444, that's very specific for how much real estate you need to sell. So that might be 3 homes, 4 homes, 5 homes. But the more that you're dialed into this, that you're tracking these numbers, you're not going to be surprised at the end of the year when you don't hit $187,000 or when you surpass that. You won't be surprised because you're constantly looking at this. You're constantly giving it attention. And when you give attention to something, that's when you're able to grow it. That's when you're able to execute this properly and appropriately. But you have to give it the attention that's necessary, and you have to be operating on correct information. Not doing any of this math and not figuring out exactly what you need to be doing every single month, that's you setting yourself up for failure because you're just hoping you get lucky, and you somehow get lucky enough to sell $6.2 million in real estate. You might be lucky for 1 sale. Maybe if you're really lucky, you get 2 sales, but that's about as much as luck will ever get you in a year. Maybe you get lucky 1 time a year and you get a home sale by pure luck, by pure chance. But don't rely on luck for your business. Don't rely on something just falling on your lap and something just being handed to you. Nothing is going to be handed to you. You've got to go out there and go take it. But you got to know what it is you need to go out there and get. So doing this math, knowing these numbers, this makes this real. This makes it tangible. This makes it where you could trust these. The whole expression about numbers don't lie, well, if you got this all figured out and you know exactly what you need to be doing every single month, those numbers aren't going to be lying. Now, you might lie and said you had a good month, but you look at the numbers, those numbers aren't going to lie if you didn't have a great month. If you didn't hit your $519,000 for the month, you're really going to be falling short of that $187,000, which maybe you're course adjusting. Maybe you're realizing $187,000 was too much and you correct that down because you're like, okay, I'm doing everything I can right now. I don't have any more money to invest in my business, so maybe this year it's only going to be $150,000 or $120,000, even $100,000. Doing this math and knowing how to do this math and rework this math, because you don't want to just do this once. You want to lay this out at ideally the beginning of the year, so we're only still in February, so there's still plenty of time for you to plan out the rest of these 11 months out of the year, 10 and a half months out of the year, because we're almost halfway through February already. So laying this out and planning this out and understanding what volume you need to be doing every single month. But not just for the number of closings. Figure out how many appointments that you need. and reverse engineer this whole process. How many appointments do I need to get to 2 closings? Maybe for you that's 2 appointments, maybe that's 10, maybe that's 20. As you start to produce more and have more data to go off in your business, that'll become a more real number for you, and this will be much more powerful because you're really just adjusting these numbers to adjust whatever outcome it is that you want to achieve. And as you understand this, you could figure out where the bottlenecks are and the breaking points of where you need to give some attention to any specific part of the process. But you need to have appointments. You also need to get leads. And you're going to need more leads and appointments than closings, and also contracts. So that's a vital step before we get to a closing. We got to have a lead to get an appointment, to get a contract, to eventually get a closing. And you reverse engineering that, saying that, okay, for 2 closings, that means I need 3 contracts a month. And for 3 contracts a month, that means I need 12 appointments. Because maybe average it takes you 4 appointments to get to a contract. And then for 12 appointments, well, I need to have maybe 24 leads to get to 12 appointments. And now when you've got this broken down for the month, and you've gone back through and you've tested these numbers, you've reran the numbers and make sure that everything is accurate, and you're making sure you're using numbers from your business. If you don't have any business already, start with something like this. But then as you start to produce results, that you're measuring those results so you can update your business plan and really understand what the real numbers really need to be. This is something good to start out with here, but again, you got to adjust this to your market once you start to figure out your skill set, your level of competency, your level of success in that area, your market share. A more experienced agent that has a market share that's been farming an area for a long time will have much better results in that neighborhood compared to a brand new agent that's never sold anything before. So this will constantly evolve and change as you and your business evolves and changes. So you've got to make sure it changes with you so this information stays accurate. So at the very least, review this every single day. Review it every single day so you know what it is that you need to be doing. And again, get this down to daily numbers. You know, if we're going to make this real easy here, work 24 days out of the month and get 1 lead a day. Because if you do that 24 days out of the month, or if you want to work every day out of the month and just end up with 30 leads. Maybe you find out that you really need 2 leads a day to be able to hit this objective. Maybe you need 3 or 4 or 5 leads per day. Look, when you first run these numbers here, even when you're going off of numbers like this that I'm giving you here, you're just guessing. You're just making a good guess. So until you actually start to produce some results and you measure those numbers and update this based on what you're actually doing in real estate and what your results are, you're not going to know how much that really equates to. But this is something good to start out with. Because if you get to producing 1 lead a day, you generating 1 lead a day as a new agent, you're doing phenomenal as a new agent. Because what that means in 30 days that you could get 30 leads. And in a year, you're going to have 365 leads. And that's pretty good as a new agent to end up with 365 leads after 1 year in real estate. Now, even if that does only result in 21 sales out of those 365 leads, maybe you end up generating 400 leads in the year. And maybe that still only results in 21 sales. And when you think about it, let's say it did take you 400 leads for the year. If you think about it, for 400 leads, for you making $187,000, if we take this $187,000 and divide it out by 400 leads, that means every lead that you got was worth almost $500. $467.50 is what that math comes out to exactly there. So this really helps you now as you try to scale your business, because now you understand where your ad spend could be at. Because if you spend more than $467, you're going to lose money. And also, if you could factor in expenses into this as well to know what the true margin is per lead, because then you'll know if you're spending more than that amount here, let's just say it's $467, and you spend more than $467, which that's a ton of money for 1 lead. So that's a lot. You could get leads for dollars, for pennies sometimes if you're really dialed into a good advertising strategy. But you've got a lot of wiggle room to work with, and now this will help show you how much you could really spend on these leads. Now, let's say it took you 800 leads to get that $187,000. We could figure out the numbers here. So again, on that $187,000 across 800 leads, that's only $233. So now you have really half the amount of money to spend compared to if you were generating 400 leads and getting $187,000. And this is one example of how your business is going to constantly change and evolve because you're going to get better. You're either going to get better or you're going to get worse. There's no staying the same. You either get better, you're closing more deals, you're becoming more efficient, or you end up doing worse. And even if you're close to being the same, you're about to head downhill. So if you did have one year where you had 187,000, the other year where you got 187,000, maybe 188, maybe 186, if you're staying right around that same territory and not making a conscious, intentional effort to push that number higher, you're going to end up falling short because the market's going to constantly evolve. You've got to make sure that you're constantly evolving with it as well. So rerunning these numbers, making sure that every single day you understand exactly what needs to be done to hit that goal. What are the things that you need to do today to get to whatever that goal is for you? And break it down into these little daily tasks that you could accomplish. And maybe these little daily tasks only inch you a little bit closer towards your goal, but if you do enough of that, if you keep inching towards that goal, eventually what happens is you usually start to take bigger bounds towards that goal, and you start to make bigger steps towards that goal. It's like first, you're crawling, then you're walking, then you're jogging, then you're sprinting. You're not born and then you just go sprinting across the room like you're Usain Bolt or something like that. You got to learn this stuff over time. This is something that happens over time. As you grow and develop yourself, you'll be able to achieve the same results faster if you are consciously making an intentional effort to grow and develop yourself and become better. But you've got to make sure that you're holding yourself accountable. Remember, one of the best benefits of being in real estate is being your own boss. But remember, you've got to be your own boss. You've got to set yourself up for success. You've got to work this plan every single day. And if you do that, the sky is the limit. There's no limit on how much money you could make. You could hit the 187,000, you could hit 200, 250, a million, whatever it is that you want to make. Figure out the math that'll take you there. Look, that's about all the time we've got for today, so thank you guys for tuning in. Really appreciate you for tuning in. If you like today's show, hit the bell icon. If you've got questions about any of the courses we have to offer, your real estate license, call us at 813-333-2676. Thank you guys for tuning in, and I'll see you next week.
The most powerful tool to study for your real estate exam is the Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate. We've used our years of experience in preparing students for the Florida real estate exam to bring you the most powerful exam study tool available. In the Question Simulator, you'll be able to go directly to a particular unit so you can focus on the sections where you need the most practice. We have also included the percentages of each unit so you know which units are the most important for your real estate exam. Every question will immediately give you detailed feedback, which is almost always more important than the question or the answer themselves. After completing all the questions in a particular unit, you can go through question by question and review any that you've gotten wrong. You could also print out a report at the end of each quiz. The Question Simulator from Tampa School of Real Estate is 100% mobile compatible, so you can practice with test questions anywhere you have your phone with you. Enroll now at questionsimulator.com and get ready to pass your exam.
State of Real Estate. Every Friday at 12 noon Eastern Time. Grow your real estate business. You're watching State of Real Estate.